So I think suffering's kind of always been a part of my life. I started when I was 3 years old. I walked in my parents' bedroom and saw my dad have his first of many heart attacks. And so that's kind of how life started, with suffering. My childhood was kind of mixed with going to the hospital a lot, watching my dad be sick. By the time I was 10, he had open heart surgery and started to feel a little bit better. But then by the time I was 11, my mom had her first heart attack. And so in and out of a lot of hospitals, kind of grew up with never knowing if my parents were going to live or die. So it was hard. It was a wonderful childhood. It was a hard childhood. And so suffering was kind of just always a part of it. My dad started having some strokes when I was in high school. And then when I was a freshman in college, he passed away. And so that was really hard. I always loved my dad. We were very close. But at the same time, I was grateful. My parents had always prayed that he could live till I was an adult, and he did. And so I was grateful for that. But it was hard. And then 5 years later, my mom met a great guy. They got remarried. 5 years after that, though, on November 24th of 1997, they were on their way to the funeral of my husband's grandma, and their plane crashed, and they were killed on impact. And so, sorry, to say that my life turned upside down is kind of an understatement. It was really hard. I had never been through that kind of a grief and that kind of suffering. And so everything in my life kind of changed over the next 5 years. So they passed away, much to the surprise of my doctors. I got pregnant, and within a few months, almost lost my baby, went on bed rest, and according to the doctors, quit my job. So in a matter of 6 months, they died. I quit my job. I'm alone in my home, fighting for the life of my child. Praise God, she's born healthy, but in that process, we kind of lost everything. We lost our income, we lost so much. And then about a year after my son was born, I lost my health. I think my body just gave out. And so I was crawling instead of walking. I was bedridden. I couldn't do a whole lot. And I just started screaming at God for why he would let this happen to me. So in that process, I became so angry and bitter and depressed, and I was angry at people that I thought didn't love us. I was mad at God for allowing it to happen. I was a mess. And I could talk to God sometimes, but I didn't want to read his word. I didn't want to hear any of his promises. I was mad. And so I'm in the basement one day as my kids are sleeping, and I just start yelling at God that it's not fair and you must not love me, and I want you to just let me go. I'm done with being a believer. I want to walk away. If this is how you treat your children, I'm done. And I asked him, I begged him, I cried, just let me go. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. And then I just said, then rebuild me, because I'm in a pit that I cannot seem to climb out of. I don't know what to do to get out of it. And so it was just a process. And so at that point, the word journey kind of came to me, that this isn't going to happen fast. It's going to be a journey. So I started reading again. I found believers who could support me in this journey. I had a couple books, one in particular that really helped me. And so I just started studying suffering. So I read Job, and I was reading other things about suffering, and just realizing that God does use suffering to teach us. He does suffering to demonstrate his love for us. And so my position on who God was started to change. I started to see that he is a God that permits suffering, but not because he doesn't love us, and not because he's a mean God. And so it was just a reframing of my understanding of who God was. And so I really camped in Lamentations 3 of, is it not from the mouth of the Most High that is it not from the mouth of the Most High that both good things and calamities come from, and he does not willingly bring affliction to his children. And so that idea that he could permit it, he does permit it, but it doesn't mean he willingly does it, and yet his compassion is tremendous in that process. And so from there, I just decided it was a choice. I could either journey down this dark pit of anger and depression and bitterness and stay there, which it was ugly, or I could choose this path of trusting God, believing in him, and choosing to just keep going. And so at that point, I just said, okay, God, I'm in for the rest of my life, good or bad, rain or sunshine, or whatever it is. I'm going to choose to trust you, and I'm going to journey with you. And so that's where it's been. And I guess between now and the day he calls me home, I'm just going to keep on that journey.